Hello and welcome to the Devonport Camera Club's first projected images competition for 2025. This competition was judged by Tina Dial, and we thank her for her informed insights and detailed comments. Chasing a Feed by Bob Goodwin. Capturing small birds in flight is not easy, and the timing is good here. I think, though, that you have cropped in this image too far, and so the image has degraded and the bird is no longer sharp. Something to be careful of. The insects add to the story. I'm Catching That Ball by Julie Phillips. Photographing dogs is great fun, but with any action you need to have a fast enough shutter speed for that type of action. Unfortunately, it was too slow here. For this type of shot, I would have at least 1/250th of a second speed. Using a shallower depth of field will also blur out the background more. So have another go. Make sure you have a fast speed, continuous focus, and see how you go. It does take some practice. Aurora Star Trails by Stephen Matthews. So pretty. The aurora lights give a different perspective to light trails, and the colours are lovely. It can be difficult with a wide-angle lens to get all perspectives straight, but it is quite a bit out here. The lights give the church a spooky feel, which I quite like. Catching Flies by Julie Phillips. A very good capture on the incoming bird. I believe you have replaced a whitish background with blue, and nothing wrong with that in an open section. But you have missed parts. Look at the wing and the feet. The noise has degraded the image somewhat, possibly exacerbated by a crop. But your timing is great. Dead Dog Gully by Rod Hamilton. It is so sad to see our rubbish dumped in our countryside, though dead cars do make for interesting subjects. This car sure has been there a while. The light is a bit flat. Using a very subtle vignette would help accentuate the car, and working a bit with dodging and burning with the history brush to bring out some of the lighter bits of bush and create a bit more contrast or depth or mood, which would lift this image. I suggest a crop on both sides and maybe just a teeny bit off the top, so that the car is stronger as the focal interest. Fun at the Farm by Jenny King. This is so cute, and the chook adds to the image. Be careful of your blurring and cloning, as the depth of field is not even across the focal plane. Some parts are blurred next to sharp parts. For example, the hose water is sharp and suddenly blurry or out of focus, plus other areas in the grass and on the girl herself. This is an image taken in difficult light, and you have done well. Only a few spots where you have lost detail. Good composition and a really nice story. Hello RACT Assistants by Daryl Starkey. LOL. Well, I don't know if he really has broken down, but it does make for a fun title. Good crop. Lake Nichols Shack by Brad Stagg. A nice view out of the window and well taken, but the image for me is over-processed. Be very careful of any burning on light skies, as it can look very unnatural. There are several ways to burn without using the actual burn tool. Google will bring up quite a few different ways. My preferred method is to use the history brush, but other times I will just create a layer, use curves, and then paint in or out as needed, building up the opacity. Mount Roland's Crowning Glory by David Hunter. You are so lucky to see such lovely auroras. Colour is nice, but the image overall is soft. A wonderful experience though. Old Pier, Eucla by Leanne Cowan. What a great old pier. I need to find that on my next trip. Using a higher f-stop would have made more of the pier in focus, for example, shooting at, say, f11. I can just see this image with a slow shutter speed, with the smoothing of the waves, maybe something to try next time. Consider a small crop on the left. Lovely colours and good exposure. Rainbow Bee-Eater by Bob Goodwin. Love these birds. However, with nature, sometimes not everything aligns. I believe this was probably a fairly big crop, as the image has degraded in quality somewhat, and the bird is no longer as sharp as it should be. Also, the stem of the branch is just intruding on his face, and at first I was wondering if he had a growth of some sort. So while a nice capture, be careful of cropping too much, and where the elements are in the image. A good capture. Scoparia in Bloom by Judy Dawkins. What a lovely lot of blooms, and the mist adds a mood. I do feel this image is a bit dark, though, and your dust spots mingle with the trees in the mist. So not clear in a couple of areas of which is which. For some reason the clarity isn't there in your image. Not sure why. Possibly noise, type of sensor, or diffraction using a high f-stop. But for me the main issue is it feels quite dark. So try lifting the shadows just a little and adding a touch of exposure. A good crop. The Dad Joke by David Bluedorn. A fun shot. For a competition though, for me, there is too much happening around, so maybe a bit of cropping to bring it in just a bit tighter. A strong dark radial gradient around the edge could help. Nice candid moment though. West Coast Beach 2 by Margaret Zablewski. Well presented as a plano. I like the sun rays and the play of light and dark. The image though feels a bit on the flat side. I think if you tried the black slider, it would just give that bit of punch and mood to the image. Not too much, and could be just tweak the highlights as well. Basically a bit more contrast to lift it. Also try an ever so slight tweak in the colour grading on the highlights. Just put a smidgen more colour into the highlights. Very nice scene. Azuring by Brad Stagg. Well, this is something very different, and I do like the arty processing done here. Not too sure about the very white parts under the chin. One could be a water drop, but the other has a more of a mist feel to it. Being so bright, it grabs your eye. The bird looks almost see-through on its tummy, like the light is coming through from behind to lighten the feathers. Creates an illusion that it is made of glass. I have scored this as an artistic image. Brand Spanking New by Jenny King. This is so cute, a very touching moment. The light is quite bright, but the background is dark and some of that darkening has gone over to Mum's chin. Be very careful of edges when burning and darkening. It tells a lovely story, a nice moment in time captured. Good composition. Granny's Jug by Anne Starkey. A nice tabletop arrangement, and I like the reflections. The front lemon is quite bright, easy to tone it down, as well as the bright part of the blue in the background. Would have been good to shoot more across rather than down for this type of image. Personal preference. Also, crop a bit off the bottom. I think that will improve composition. Guide Falls by David Hunter. This is a nice lot of water coming down the falls. Your image is just a weeny bit off kilter and the light feels flat. Play with your black and white sliders to add a bit more contrast and depth to your image. It will pop more. Good composition and good detail. Nice foreground. Ripples by Margaret Soblewski. I have no idea what I am looking at, but the colours complement nicely and interesting patterns. Definitely would suit hanging in a modern home. It's an interesting abstract. Santa Hay Bale Theme, Contemplating a Changing World by Rob Dawkins. A fun shot that you can't help but smile at. Well seen and well taken. Good detail and composition. Summer Splendour by Baden Smith. A nice image, good detail and the pinky red colour pops. The flower is quite close to the top edge. I think just a bit more room at the top would be better so that it doesn't look cramped. Maybe even cropping off some of the bottom could give the illusion of more room at the top. The side background is nicely darkened, but it hasn't continued through between the leaves, so it does leave a bit of a funny look. Still, a nice image though. Sunrise at Lake Manapuri by Daryl Starkey. A lovely peaceful scene. I get the impression of a bit of haloing in the hills, and the cloud top right seems a touch oversaturated. I do like the image though. It has good composition. Catalpa speciosa by Tony Soblewski. Pretty flowers and a nicely taken image. Composition is good and good detail. Good use of depth of field of the flowers and still having a nice soft background. Liffey River No. 2 by Gil Hayes. Lovely image. The waterfall is a bit blue. Use of the white eyedropper from Curves will balance out the colours better. If you prefer the colours of the overall scene as they are, you can do a layer and just change the waterfall and adjust opacity as well. The rocks seem a bit over-sharpened and or noisy, and the bottom of the falls are showing enhanced noise quite strongly. If you used topaz, you have to watch carefully what it does. Adjust settings as needed. A lovely composition though, you are drawn into the waterfall. I really like this image. Mum and Baby Sunset by Mike Jones. Okay. First up, a comment about the nature side of things. As a nature image, it won't pass muster because all editing must appear natural. But as this is not nature but open, I will wear a different hat. I really like this image, even though the elephants are too light for the scene in reality. You have created an interesting image. Just fix the bit between Mum's head and Bub's. Lovely detail on the elephants. The colours and the setting sun are nice. In artistic terms, I really like this. Good composition. Starburst by Tony Sablewski. A lovely effect from the starburst. The colours complement and the dark background accentuates that. A really well taken and edited image. Surge by David Bluedorn. I am very much into this type of photography these days, and I use various slow shutter speeds to create different effects. I really like the play of colour in this image and the composition of the water flow, how it peaks in a little crescendo. For me, this is a mesmerising image. Wildflowers by Leanne Cohen. What a lovely lot of wildflowers, and I like the fact it was taken on the side of a hill. The rocks and trees add that extra element to the image. I feel the image is slightly off kilter, though, going by the field in the background. A slight tweak and it might even give more impact to the angle of where the wildflowers are growing. Nice colours and composition. A Wet Golden Whistler by Rob Dawkins. Lovely image, good crop, exposure and detail. Chameleon by Mike Jones. Wow, what a shot. This is just fantastic. Love the colours, excellent detail, and the background is nicely out of focus. Composition is good. A top shot. Into the Mist by Judy Dawkins. Love this image, the mood the fog gives. Nice composition. I find all the elements interesting. One suggestion, though, is to crop off a tiny bit on the left of the tree trunk and not have that little bit of bright fog sitting on the edge. Three Hummock Island by Gil Hayes. Lovely composition, though I do feel the rock could have just a bit more breathing space up the top. You are drawn right through the image. Good detail. I like the calmness of the water. The sky blue feels just a teeny bit strong, but overall this is a lovely image. Yellow and Purple by Stephen Matthews. This is the first time I have seen droplets presented this way, and it is very effective and colourful. Just be careful with pushing pixels as you have a bit of banding on the pinks and purples. Not sure if you did the lightening in JPEG, but if you did, try using a 16-bit to help with that. B&W Abstract Iron by Leanne Cohen. A well-taken image, but I feel it lacks a bit of punch. Just a suggestion, but you could really make the sky very dark. Bring a bit of exposure into the interesting framing in the middle and darken off on both sides. It would give more depth and mood. Christmas at the Mall by Bob Goodwin. A well-taken image, but it feels very busy. I wonder if it appears more so in mono than in colour, from all of the lights as they create so many little white dots. Hard to know. Good composition. Elephant High Key by Mike Jones. Interesting to present in high key. I do feel that the image does need a boost in the blacks though, so the elephant has more depth to it. Have a look at your levels and tweak from there. Image works well as a vertical crop. Joe Whitty by Daryl Starkey. Good capture of the bird, they are so cute. Unfortunately, the background is quite busy even though out of focus, and the bird gets a bit lost in the overall scene. Maybe this would suit colour more so than mono? Using a radial gradient, you could lighten up the middle areas around the bird and then another to darken the sides. That would help with making the bird stand out more. Listening to the Audience by Anne Starkey. This is a nice portrait and I do like it, but the artificial blur feels too fake to represent a natural out-of-focus background. The background is a little distracting and not sure what the solid black is behind her neck. A good crop and I like her expression. Longhorned Cow by Julie Phillips. A good capture, but it needs a bit more in processing to add some depth and or mood to the image. Also, if you could have gone down lower and shot across more, it would have had a stronger impact. But try to darken off the sides and bottom a bit and see how it looks. It is a well taken image with good detail on the cow, and yes, those are impressive horns. Quiet Moments by Jenny King. This is a lovely image, showing the bond between owner and horse. I love the feel of the image, but I am so very sorry, but I feel your processing has not helped. You can tell you have done a blur, and it just doesn't look right. It is too strong, and the problem with a general blur is that there is no gradual depth to it. You should try using neural filters for blurring, but ease back on how much blur you do. It shows up on the hard edges, and you missed a bit between the girl's thumb and fingers. I also think you have darkened her arm and the hand that is holding the horse a bit too much. The horse is a bit dark as well. I would love for you to reprocess this image, as I really think this would be a lovely shot to hang on the wall. A lovely, candid moment. Windmill on Three Hummock Island by Rob Dawkins. The broken pane adds interest to this image. The blacks are good, but there are shadows along the bottom edge, and in this instance I would boost the whites more to remove it. Also, you could crop just a little bit along the bottom as well, and maybe on the side to keep composition. The extra contrast will make this bold image that would suit hanging in a bold, simplistic environment. I also like the vegetation on the side. Adds a twist to the scene. Wynyard Lighthouse by David Hunter. You have taken a good shot of the lighthouse, but it is lacking black tones. It feels as if the shadows were lifted too far, and it makes the image a bit flat. Have a look at your levels and play with the black slider to bring some depth to the image. Try a little crop of the foreground as well. Adventure Bay by Tony Sablewski. A pretty scene, and I like the use of the slow shutter to give the image mood. Good foreground interest. I am, however, going to say you really need to get your sensor cleaned. There is an awful lot of dust bunnies in your image, and they do detract somewhat. Nice tones in the mono. Black and White Trails by Stephen Matthews. The house is a nice feature as the foreground to your image. I would just darken off the very bottom of the image though. The star trails are quite bright, maybe just a very small tweak in the curves to lower the brightness just a bit. Did well with the star trails. Campfire Glow by Brad Stagg. This is a well taken image. For me though, the face is just a touch dark. By your title, you could add some exposure to his face. Try using a soft radial gradient and boost exposure a bit, and let it spill into the lighter area of his chest. His face is the point of interest, and the image will stand out a bit more with extra exposure on him. Composition is good, and I like that he isn't looking at you, but appears to be reflecting on things. A good detail. Forgotten Wheel by Gil Hayes. I like the grungy texture of old wood, and the cobwebs add to this image. Composition and conversion is good. To give just a bit more oomph, a tweak in the blacks would be good, and a subtle vignette. Abstract in Shadows by Baden Smith. Good processing in mono, but play with your black slider in levels and see how the image will have more contrast. Possibly even a touch of white level slider. It is an image that grabs you with the shade and light, so that extra bit of punch will make it pop. Good composition. No Ripple Tonight by Anne Starkey. This is a nice scene. You handled the tricky lighting well, and the reflection adds that extra element. I find both parts interesting to look at. Some areas are a little bright, but it's a good conversion into mono. Two Roads by David Bluedorn. I find these old European towns so interesting. Would love to see inside that house between the two roads. It's just a bit bright on the left, easy enough to tone down. Nice that it wasn't overrun with people. Well composed. Bruni Lighthouse 1 by Margaret Sablewski. Spiral staircases are a popular subject and look great when done well. I didn't go inside this lighthouse, and I think I should have. Mono suits this image, a good crop and detail. Dying Cider Gums by Judy Dawkins. This is a beautifully presented image. The conversion is good, the processing to bring out the subtle lights and darks is well done and gives depth to the image. A good composition. Travel the Miles by Baden Smith. This is a lovely portrait, and you have done very well with the background. You did miss a teeny bit in his beard, but it is not that easy to pick. His face is very interesting. A great shot. Thank you, Devonport Camera Club, for the invitation to judge your images. It has been a pleasure. I'd like to make a few comments as a prelude to the judging. I appreciate all images, but as a competition I have to be much more select about images and more critical. Also, apart from the technical side of things, it is also how the image moves me. And images will move different people in different ways. Some might not feel too enthused or get it, and others will love what you have done. It is so subjective. This is just my opinion, and another judge may and probably would see things differently. I would like to make some general comments about processing. This is not so much to have a go at anyone, but my perception. I judge quite a few national and international competitions, so I have a reasonable understanding of what won't get accepted because of the processing. Natural blur. I guess this is my soapbox moment, but you can't beat natural blur. I am seeing lots of clubs lately trying to blur the background using something like Gaussian blur. This is not easy to do, and often edges end up being sharp and blurry next to each other. And to me, it just doesn't look right. Also, the problem is that the blur is even across the image, and natural blur has gradual depth through the image. So I would like to encourage you to try and use your f-stops to attain your shallow depth of field, and don't feel everything in the background has to be blurred. If you would like to blur, try the neural filters in Photoshop, where you can adjust the depth of the blur. Still not great, but better than a blanket Gaussian blur. There are probably other ways as well, but I don't know them. Dodging and burning. My latest method for dodging and burning is to use the history brush on a layer in Photoshop. I will attach my method separately for those members who would like to see it. I find it heaps better than the normal dodge and burn tools. Again, there are other ways, but this is my favourite. Radial filters. Radial filters are also another way to bring out my subject more. Using a radial filter with good feathering to lighten your subject, and then one in reverse to darken ever so little around the image, also creates depth. I do this as a layer in Photoshop and then into Adobe Camera Raw. I can adjust it when it comes back into Photoshop to suit my needs. And finally, feel your image. Most important of all, it is your image and your pride. It doesn't matter in the long run if the judge doesn't get it or doesn't like your processing. Whatever you feel from your image is the most important thing. All I ask is that you consider the suggestions I have made, see if it works, and if not, does not matter. If it does, then great. Enjoy your photography.